For the past year, I've been working on something a little bit unusual. A heavy metal trivia card game. You see, about a year ago, I had a realization. Metal fans love board games. We love trivia. We love arguing about music history. But when I looked around, there were no metal trivia games, at least not a modern one. There was actually one guy who made a metal trivia game back in the late 90s or early 2000s, but it's completely out of print now, and no one's really done anything like it since, which felt strange to me because I've been obsessed with metal since I was a teenager. Growing up in the late 90s and early 2000s, metal was everywhere in the counterculture. Bands like Linkin Park, Korn, Slipknot. These bands were my gateway and I was hooked. I would spend hours reading about bands, watching documentaries, digging through interviews, learning about how scenes were formed, albums were made, and all of the crazy lore that surrounds this genre. And as someone who eventually became a metal artist myself, these stories really meant a lot to me. They made the people that inspired me just seem human. Like they just loved music and really wanted to make something. So when I realized nothing like this really existed anymore, something about the idea stuck with me. I knew it wasn't going to be a quick project. It felt like something worth building properly, but I was determined to make it a reality. So I started writing trivia questions. And once you start writing trivia questions about metal, you realize very quickly just how deep the history actually goes. Over 50 years of bands, dozens of subgenres, and subgenres of those subgenres, legendary albums, wild stories, and cultural moments that shaped not only the entire genre, but also impacted popular culture. At some point, I realized I had accidentally become a part-time metal historian, and you come across some ridiculous lore. For instance, did you know that the band Cannibal Corpse actually appeared in Ace Ventura: Pet Detective, specifically at the request of Jim Carrey? Crazy, I know. And that's what made me realize that this game could be about more than just band facts. It could also capture all the weird ways metal has crossed into popular culture, which is a lot. From the satanic panic of the 80s, battles over censorship and free speech, the new metal explosion of the 90s, metal in film, television, and video games, metal has become hugely influential. I also had to think about what kind of trivia game I wanted this to be, because metal is huge, and even if you're a fan, there's so much history and so many bands and subgenres that I didn't want the game to feel intimidating. So I made it multiple choice. I wanted it to feel fun, accessible, and rewarding without feeling like you already had to know everything. And I also made sure every question includes an explanation and some extra trivia. So even if you don't know the answer, you still come away learning something new. But writing questions was only part of the process. I needed to know if the trivia game actually worked. So I started testing it with different groups. Metal fans, friends, trivia players, putting the questions in front of real people and seeing how they responded. Some questions were too easy. Other questions were way too obscure. And some turned out to be perfect. Around that time, I started experimenting with something else. I began hosting live metal trivia nights, using some of the questions in a completely different format. And seeing people compete over these questions in a room of metal fans showed me something really important. People loved it. And that's when I realized this might actually work. And after months of writing questions, testing them, and refining the design, I finally reached the point where the game became a physical thing. While all of that was happening, I was also working on the design side of the game. Because if this was going to be a metal game, it needed to have the right visual identity. I worked with a freelance metal logo designer named Tristan Newitt to create the logo and branding for the game. And I also worked with a freelance game artist in Turkey named Kerem, designing the card and box art. Both of them were incredibly helpful in bringing the visual side of the project to life. That part was really exciting. But then came the less glamorous stage. Because once the questions were written and the designs were ready, I had to actually turn hundreds of questions into hundreds of formatted cards, which meant taking this giant spreadsheet of over 300 questions and merging all of that data into the card templates inside InDesign, which if you've ever worked with InDesign data mergers, you'll know can be a bit of an adventure. But after months of writing questions, testing them with players, working with artists, and wrestling with formatting, I finally reached the moment where the game became real. At the end of last year, I finally printed the first prototype. Seeing the cards for the first time was a strange moment, because this thing had lived in my head for almost a year, and suddenly it just existed as a physical object. I remember opening the box and just staring at it and thinking, wait, I actually made this. That year-long obsession, all of it turned into this one deck of cards. The game is called Gatekeeper because metal is more than just a genre. It's an entire culture with decades of history behind it. I'll be launching a crowdfunding campaign later this year to help bring this game to life. So if you want to be notified when that goes live, there's a link in the description so you can join the mailing list. And if you want to follow this journey as this thing comes together, please subscribe to the channel and follow my socials. Welcome to Gatekeeper.